Have you ever felt like you're constantly defending yourself? Explaining your choices, your dreams, your struggles to people who will never understand? There was a taxi driver named Marcus who learned the hard way that the people who matter don't need explanations, and the people who don't matter don't deserve them. This is his story. Marcus had been driving a taxi for 7 years in the city. 7 long years navigating the same streets, learning every shortcut, every traffic pattern. Every day, he'd wake up at 5 a.m., moving quietly through his small apartment in the darkness. He'd make his way down the hallway to his daughter's room, where 8-year-old Maya slept peacefully, and kiss his sleeping daughter goodbye before heading out into the pre-dawn hours. Then he'd hit the streets, his white sedan merging into the flow of early morning traffic. But Marcus wasn't just a taxi driver. He was working on building his own transportation business, a fleet of vehicles he would own and operate. He had a plan, carefully documented in spreadsheets and notebooks. He had a vision, so clear he could see every detail of his future success. And most importantly, he had discipline. Real discipline that separated him from other drivers who just went through the motions. But there was one problem that was draining his energy more than the long shifts, more than difficult passengers, more than the physical exhaustion. He kept explaining himself to everyone, and it was slowly eating away at his resolve. His family didn't understand why he was still just driving a taxi at 35. 35 years old, and in their eyes, he had nothing to show for it. His uncle Jerome would bring it up at every family gathering, his voice carrying across the room for everyone to hear. His old friends mocked him for not having a real career, making jokes whenever they ran into him, treating his dreams like delusions. Even some passengers would make comments that cut deep, subtle judgments in their tone, dismissive looks when he mentioned driving for a living. And Marcus? He would spend hours explaining his plans, his struggles, his reasons. Every single time, he'd tell them about the business he was building, laying out every detail of his strategy. He'd talk about the sacrifices he was making, the long hours, the careful budgeting, the delayed gratification. He'd paint a picture of the future he was creating, trying desperately to make them see what he saw so clearly. But their eyes would glaze over, that distant look that told him they'd stopped listening. Their judgment never changed, no matter how detailed his explanations. And Marcus felt exhausted, like he was fighting a battle he could never win, pouring his energy into a black hole that gave nothing back. One rainy night, Marcus picked up an elderly man from the airport. The rain was coming down hard, turning the streets into rivers of reflected light. The man was quiet at first, settling into the back seat with just a small suitcase and a worn leather briefcase. But then he noticed Marcus's worn-out face in the rearview mirror. The tired eyes, the heavy shoulders, the weight of something more than just a long shift. "You look tired, son," he said, his voice gentle but observant. Marcus sighed and began to explain his business plans, his family's doubts, his friends' criticisms, the constant pressure to justify his choices. He went on for 10 minutes, maybe more, defending his life to a complete stranger he'd never see again. The words poured out like a dam had broken. When he finished, slightly embarrassed by how much he'd revealed, the old man smiled knowingly and said something that changed everything. "Why are you giving your power away to people who aren't even in your car?" The question hung in the air between them, simple but profound. The old man continued, his voice taking on the weight of hard-earned experience. "I spent 30 years as a surgeon. Cardiovascular surgery, some of the most complex procedures you can imagine. You know what I learned during those 3 decades? The people who questioned me never operated on a single patient. Not one. The people who doubted me never saved a single life. They never stood in an operating room making life or death decisions. But they sure had opinions about how I should live my life. Your life is your journey, son, not theirs. You're the driver." He gestured around the taxi. Right now, literally, you're the driver. Everyone else? They're just passengers passing through. Some will be in your car for 5 minutes, some for 5 years, but this. He pointed to the steering wheel with emphasis. This is always yours to control. The wheel, the direction, the destination, that's yours. Stop explaining yourself to people who aren't making the journey with you. Stop giving them power over your steering wheel. Those words hit Marcus like lightning, a jolt of recognition that seemed to illuminate everything at once. He had been giving his power away, handing it over freely to anyone who questioned him. He had been letting passengers in his life, people who were temporary, people who weren't invested in his success, people who would never celebrate his victories, control how he felt about himself. Control his peace, his confidence, his sense of worth. He realized that his daughter, sleeping peacefully at home every morning when he left, never asked him to explain. She just loved him unconditionally. His business partners, the few who truly believed in him and his vision, never needed convincing. They just showed up, put in the work, trusted the process. Everyone else? They were just noise. Static. Distractions taking up valuable mental space and emotional energy that he desperately needed for the actual work of building his dream. From that night on, Marcus made a decision. A firm, unshakable decision that would change everything. He would stop explaining. No more defending, no more justifying, no more exhausting attempts to make people understand. When his uncle asked why he was wasting his life driving a taxi, Marcus simply smiled and said, "I'm exactly where I need to be," then changed the subject. When old friends made jokes about his little taxi dreams, he didn't defend himself. He just kept moving forward, kept working, kept building. When passengers made assumptions about his life or his intelligence or his ambitions, he let them. He simply let them think whatever they wanted to think. Because Marcus understood something powerful. Explanation is not required when you're walking your own path. Your path doesn't need anyone's permission or approval to be valid. The right people will see your vision without you having to paint the picture for them. The right people will understand without lengthy explanations. Something incredible happened when Marcus stopped wasting energy on explanations. The energy Marcus used to waste on defending himself, on trying to convince people who would never be convinced, he poured it into his business. All of it. Within 2 years, he launched his own small fleet of vehicles. 3 cars beyond his own, with carefully selected drivers who shared his vision for excellent service. Within 5 years, he had 15 drivers working for him, a small office, and a growing reputation in the city for reliability and professionalism. His family, the same ones who doubted him and questioned his choices for years, now asked him for business advice and financial help. His friends, the ones who mocked him and made jokes at his expense, now asked him for opportunities, for jobs, for a piece of what he'd built. But Marcus never said, "I told you so." He never threw their doubt back in their faces. He had learned that success is the best response, and silence is the most powerful answer. His results spoke louder than words ever could. Here's what Marcus discovered and what you need to understand. When you stop explaining yourself, you reclaim your power. All of it. You stop living for the approval of people who don't even know your struggle, who haven't walked a mile in your shoes, who can't see what you see. You stop exhausting yourself trying to justify your journey to people who aren't even traveling with you. People who are standing on the sidelines critiquing while you're in the arena actually doing the work. The lion doesn't explain to the sheep why he's the king of the jungle. He doesn't hold meetings to justify his position or defend his choices. He just is. He just does. He just leads. Your actions will speak louder than any explanation ever could. Your results will silence the critics far more effectively than your words ever will. So ask yourself today, who are you explaining yourself to? Really think about it. Who are you trying to convince of your worth, of your vision, of your path? And more importantly, why? Why are you giving them that power over your peace and your progress? Your dreams don't need a defense attorney arguing their case. Your journey doesn't need a press release justifying every decision. Your life doesn't require approval from people who aren't living it. The people who are meant to understand will understand. They'll see it, they'll feel it, they'll support it without you having to explain a single thing. The people who aren't meant to understand, let them wonder, let them talk, let them judge. It doesn't matter. Stop explaining yourself to everyone. Start living for yourself. Your life, your rules, your road. Now go drive it like you mean it. The wheel is yours. Take control and never let go.